Matt Gaetz is in the news. This guy is in a situation. That's all I can call it right now. He is the situation, if you want to go that route. He is facing a Justice Department inquiry, an investigation over sex with an underage girl. This New York Times story came out, and everybody's kind of scratching their heads about it. Simultaneously to this story coming out, Matt Gaetz is out responding to it, saying, oh, no, this has nothing to do. This is all basically a bunch of malarkey. And I'm actually involved in an extortion scheme for over $20 million. My father was going to wear a wire and go out these people who are orchestrating this entire scheme. What? Like, is this a movie? Is this a Netflix series? So this was all happening late last night, and this story was also posted over by the New York Times. So we're going to go through it. We're going to go through the original story, some of the original allegations. We're going to take a look at Matt Gaetz. We're going to review what happened on Tucker Carlson last night. Weird interview. And we're going to get some response and some reaction from other people out there on Capitol Hill, other people who are part of this power structure, because we have a potential for criminal charges in many directions, not only against potentially Representative Matt Gaetz, who's a congressperson, by the way. I didn't even mention that. And somebody who he is claiming is behind the extortion scheme, which is a former U.S. attorney somewhere, I think it was the First Circuit, one of these circuits. So a lot of finger pointing going on. It's going to be interesting. Let's get into it. This is from the NewYorkTimes.com, posted late last night. It says Matt Gaetz is said to face a Justice Department inquiry over sex with an underage girl, written by Michael Schmidt, Katie Benner, and Nicholas Fandos. So Rep. Matt Gaetz of Florida, close ally to Trump, is being investigated by the Justice Department over whether he had a sexual relationship with the 17-year-old and paid for her to travel with him, according to 3 people briefed on the matter. Investigators are examining whether Gaetz violated sex trafficking laws, a variety of federal statutes that make it illegal to induce someone under 18 to travel over state lines. Justice Department regularly prosecutes these cases. Not clear how Gaetz met the girl. She was 17, believed to be 17 at the time, about 2 years ago. Investigation was open in the final months of the Trump administration under William Barr, the 2 people said. Gaetz's profile: senior Justice Department officials in Washington, including some appointed by Trump, were notified of the investigation. 3 people said that the examination of Mr. Gaetz, who's 38 years old, is part of a broader investigation into a political ally of his, a local Florida man named Joel Greenberg, who was indicted last summer over an array of charges, including sex trafficking of a child and financially supporting people in exchange for sex, at least one of whom was an underage girl. So you can kind of see where that's going, right? If Matt Gaetz' friend is in trouble for this type of stuff, well, obviously you can just presume Matt Gaetz is involved in it. Sort of that guilty by association. So that's where that story's going. We also are going to finish that up. We have here Mr. Greenberg, who has since resigned his post as a tax collector, visited Gaetz in 2019. So it's sort of guilt by association. No charges have been brought against Mr. Gaetz, and the extent of his criminal exposure is unclear. So he gets the presumption of innocence, just like everybody should. Matt Gaetz said in an interview that his lawyers had been in touch with the Justice Department and that they were told he was the subject, not the target of an investigation. He said, quote, "I only know that it has to do with women." So he wants to get clear about that. "I have a suspicion that someone is trying to recategorize my generosity to ex-girlfriends as something more untoward." In a second interview later on Tuesday, Congressman said he had no plans to resign his seat, denied having romantic relationships with minors. "It is verifiably false that I have traveled with a 17-year-old woman," he said. Representatives for the Justice Department and FBI declined to comment, as did the U.S. Attorney's Office in California. Greenberg, his friend, pled not guilty last year. Frequent presence on Fox News and others. He recently mused with confidants about quitting elected politics and taking a full-time job with Newsmax or another network, according to Axios, which is a very interesting timing, right? If you sort of know that, hey, maybe you're about to be federally indicted, maybe it's a good time to transition and go take a job in a different line of work, which is what a lot of the speculation is saying. And so, of course, Mr. Gaetz is a big public figure, somebody who deserves the presumption of innocence, and so we're going to afford him that, but we are going to continue to go through this. So here is his response. Mr. Gaetz: "Over the past several weeks, my family and I have been victims of an organized criminal extortion involving a former DOJ official seeking $25 million while threatening to smear my name. We've been cooperating with federal authorities in the matter." And here is something else he said, posted by Jonathan Swan. "I have definitely in my single days provided for women I've dated. I've paid for flights, for hotel rooms. I've been, generous as a partner. I think someone is trying to make that look criminal when it's not. So he's a generous guy. Who isn't a generous person out there? That's not bad. So let's take a look here. Now, Matt Gaetz says he's under federal investigation for sexual misconduct. Of note, he said in a later statement released Tuesday night that they've been victims of organized criminal extortion, seeking $25 million while threatening to smear my name. We've been cooperating with the FBI and federal authorities. My father has been wearing a wire at the FBI's direction to catch these criminals. Wow. The planted leak to the New York Times tonight was intended to thwart that investigation, says Gaetz. No part of the allegations against me are true, and the people pushing these lies are targets of the ongoing extortion investigation. I demand the DOJ immediately release the tapes made at their direction, which implicate their former colleagues in crimes against me based on false allegations. Whoa. So he's saying that maybe this DOJ investigation, this indictment that may be forthcoming, the allegations that he was sex trafficking or whatever those were with a 17-year-old years ago was an effort to discredit him before they got caught from the sting operation that his father was involved in. Is this real life? What are we talking about here? So this is an interesting story. He was on Tucker Carlson last night. We have some clips of this. I think we've got 4 clips. We're going to see which ones we've got here. But Tucker, this is a weird interview. So Tucker last night says, all right, well, this story is just breaking. Bump somebody, get him off, see if Matt Gaetz will come on. Matt Gaetz comes on. Nobody knows anything about what's happening because the story was just breaking. A lot of these responses and clips are sort of coming out of this interview. And so this was taking place last night. Let's listen in and see what we've got here.
What the truth is from your perspective.
It is a horrible allegation, and it is a lie. The New York Times is running a story that I have traveled with a 17-year-old woman, and that is verifiably false. People can look at my travel records and see that that is not the case. What is happening is an extortion of me and my family involving a former Department of Justice official. On March 16th, my father got a text message demanding a meeting wherein a person demanded $25 million in exchange for making horrible sex trafficking allegations against me go away. Our family was so troubled by that, we went to the local FBI. And the FBI and the Department of Justice were so concerned about this attempted extortion of a member of Congress that they asked my dad to wear a wire, which he did with the former Department of Justice official. Tonight, I am demanding that the Department of Justice and the FBI release the audio recordings that were made under their supervision and at their direction, which will prove my innocence and that will show that these allegations aren't true. They're merely intended to try to bleed my family out of money. And this former Department of Justice official tomorrow was supposed to be contacted by my father so that specific instructions could be given regarding the wiring of $4.5 million as a down payment on this bribe. I don't think it's a coincidence that tonight, somehow, the New York Times is leaking this information, smearing me, and ruining the investigation that would likely result in one of the former colleagues of the current DOJ being brought to justice for trying to extort me and my family.
What? So he's basically saying this is like a scene out of House of Cards or one of these political thrillers. In other words, Dad today was supposed to go and meet with the guy who was extorting them for $25 million. They were going to have instructions communicated today about where to transfer $4 and change million from the Gaetz family over to these extortionists. And lo and behold, the day before that meeting is supposed to happen, there's this story that gets leaked over to the New York Times. Somebody picks up the phone, calls the New York Times, says, "Hey, listen to this." They publish this story. You know, we don't know what the source is. I think we've got some clips on the author who drafted the story, but very interesting timing, isn't it? Just all sort of bubbles up. Now you can look at this from both angles. You can say that, oh well, you know, this is Matt Gaetz trying to get ahead of the ball by saying, well, you know, oh, this indictment's coming. Oh, we're just going to go and we're also involved in an extortion scheme. Maybe it has nothing to do with anything, but it's just good timing. It's a weird coincidence. And so he's going to be, you know, sort of bolstering this up to say that what otherwise could have been a legitimate investigation from the DOJ is really not legitimate. It's biased. So he's trying to taint the well, as it were. Whereas the other, he's making the claim to the exact opposite. that he was about to unveil this big explosive story that incriminates former members of the DOJ in this bizarre $25 million extortion scheme for a federal congressperson. And now he's, what is going on? This is a weird story. And so the question is, like, who do you believe on some of this stuff? Matt Gaetz comes out. He's very specific. He's got some pretty, compelling language there. Says, well, my father was involved, going to wear a wire tomorrow. We actually went to the FBI. This is a family problem. And Tucker's just doing his thing, going, the thing he does at the camera. What the hell is going on right now? And so we've got some more clips. Here is Gaetz calling out somebody by name, David McGee.
First of all, who is this Department of Justice former employee who's trying to extort the money from you, you say?
His name is David McGee. He was a top official in the leadership in the Northern District of Florida as a prosecutor. He currently works at the Beggs and Lane law firm. As a matter of fact, one of the recordings that was made at the FBI and Department of Justice request occurred at that law firm. And the money that was supposed to be paid today that would have shown even more evidence of David McGee's work in this extortion scheme, that was foiled by the New York Times story. And I believe that's why this horrible information and these terrible allegations have been used this evening.
So name, rank, phone number, address. I mean, he almost gave you everything for that guy. This is where he works with this law firm. This is what he does. So, before you go out there on a public station like Tucker's, which has one of the biggest audience is, I think, in cable news, you got to be pretty clear about your facts, because those might be defamatory statements. I mean, he might be exposing himself to all sorts of criminal liability. So you're going to be pretty clear before you go out there and make a big statement like that. So you would presume that, hey, he knows what he's doing, and maybe there is, in fact, something there, but who knows? We have another clip. Let's see what this one is.
Was motivated by greed. He was trying to extort money from your family. That's his motivation, you're saying?
I know that there was a demand for money in exchange for a commitment that he could make this investigation go away along with his co-conspirators. They even claimed to have specific connections inside the Biden White House. Now, I don't know if that's true. They were promising that Joe Biden would pardon me. Obviously, I don't need a pardon. I'm not seeking a pardon. I have not done anything improper or wrong. But what I am troubled by is the real motivation for all of this. Just tonight, Ted Lieu, a Democrat, is calling on me to be removed from the House Judiciary Committee. And I believe we are in an era of our politics now, Tucker, where people are smeared to try to take them out of the conversation. I'm not the only person on screen right now who's been falsely accused of a terrible sex act. You were accused of something that you did not do. And so you know what this feels like. You know the pain it can bring to your family. And you know how it just puts people on defense when you're accused of something so salacious and awful. But it did not happen. It is not true. And the fact that it is the basis of this attempt to extort my family tells a lot. And if the FBI and Department of Justice will release the tapes that they are in possession of, the American people will see what is really going on.
You just referred to a mentally ill viewer who accused me.
All right, so we didn't finish the rest of that clip, but Tucker Carlson, he comes out, and this is where this interview got weird a little bit. You saw some of that. You didn't see Tucker's reaction. I'll fill you in on it. Basically, he finishes that, and he says, yeah, you know that sexual assault allegation you were talking about? That was from a mentally ill viewer from 20 years ago who didn't even watch the show or something, right? He goes on. It was totally not even remotely close to anything credible. And so as I'm watching this is the first time this happens. This happens again. It might be in the next clip, maybe not. I don't know. But he's basically, Matt Gaetz is trying to cozy up to Tucker. He's trying to kind of, throw the hula hoop around him. Get in here, boy. We've been in this thing together. We've been through something like this. You've got somebody make false allegations against you. I've got somebody making false allegations against me. You know how hard this is. Tucker comes back and goes, no, I don't. Mine is not like yours. All right. So don't lasso me into this rodeo there, cowboy. This is your bag, not mine. We're not kindred spirits here. And he goes on and he kind of just, Gaetz is like, come on over here. And Tucker's just like, no, go away. And he does that again in another clip. Maybe this is it. We'll see. But it's a weird thing because he also says to Tucker that, well, let's see what we got here.
You say that it was or is underway. There was an investigation. What is the basis of that investigation? What is the allegation? That's really not very clear from these news stories.
Yeah, again, I only know what I've read in the New York Times. I can say that actually you and I went to dinner about 2 years ago. Your wife was there, and I brought a friend of mine. You'll remember her. And she was actually threatened by the FBI, told that if she wouldn't cop to the fact that somehow I was involved in some pay-for-play scheme, that she could face trouble. And so I do believe that there are people at the Department of Justice who are trying to smear me, providing for flights and hotel rooms for people that you're dating who are of legal age is not a crime. And I'm just troubled that the lack of any sort of legitimate investigation into me would then convert into this extortion attempt.
I don't remember the woman you're speaking of or the context at all, honestly. But I would like to know who. So they're saying there is a 17-year-old girl.
All right. So again, you saw that happen. Hey, oh yeah, Tucker, you know her, right? The 17-year-old girl we had dinner with, you and your wife, Tucker. I have no idea what you're talking about. But anyways, it's 17-year-old, and he just kind of goes on, rolls with the interview. He comes back later. We might have a clip of that, but he says that was the weirdest interview that I've ever done. It was weird. It felt like they were trying to be buddy-buddy, or that Gaetz was trying to be buddy-buddy with him, and it just didn't land. Tucker was not having that. Just, wanted to get to the nuts and bolts of it. And interesting stuff. So now we have some reaction from other people around the interwebs. This is over from Scott Dworkin. Says that Matt Gaetz is accusing David McGee of crimes. McGee is the former first assistant at U.S. Attorney's Office and was lead attorney for a U.S. DOJ organized crime task force. He received honors from the Secret Service and even a special commendation from the FBI director. Well, does anybody have really faith in any of those organizations or institutions anymore? I don't. So yeah, I understand what he's doing. He's trying to say, well, look at all these credentials this guy's got. All right, it's the U.S. Department of Justice. Big deal. What are they? They can't even handle 250 cases that come out of nowhere on January 6th. Oh, everything's melting down in D.C., so they're useless. The FBI gets laptops filled with potential criminality. They sit on it for a year. And who else do we've got? U.S. DOJ. No, I covered them all. Oh, Secret Service. I don't have much complaints about them. Other than the fact that it sounds like they may have just covered up for Hunter Biden from a prior case where he threw a gun in a trash can. So there you go. A lot of faith in those institutions. Here is a former DOJ official accused of extorting Matt Gaetz. He says he denies the allegations. His name is David McGee. He was a top official, says Gaetz. McGee is a partner at the Pensacola, Florida law firm Beggs & Lane, where he practices both criminal and civil litigation. He previously served as the first attorney assistant, lead attorney, blah, blah, blah. McGee said the extortion allegations were a blatant attempt to distract from the fact that Gaetz is apparently about to be indicted for sex trafficking of underage girls, according to the Daily Beast. And so you can see where this is going, right? Gaetz is saying, no, I'm coming out first because we were about to just blast David McGee for extorting our family for $25 million. David McGee comes out and says, no, this is just a distraction because we were just about to indict him, or he wasn't. He's not at the DOJ anymore. He's at Beggs & Lane. But the DOJ was just about to indict him. So everybody's trying to jump the gun first. Let's take a look over from New York Times reporter Katie Benner told MSNBC's Rachel Maddow that while Gaetz may be the victim of an extortion plot, she stands by her reporting on the DOJ investigation. She is bylined on the New York Times article that we covered. She explains the timeline of the investigation and how Gaetz' claim of extortion, how it fits into the plot. So yeah, we'll get there in a minute. But the point is, these things could be connected or they could be totally separate, right? Gaetz really could be being extorted, and he also could be about to be indicted for whatever. Those things could be running in parallel, and they're just sort of bubbling up at the same time, and Gaetz is using it, one to sort of mute the other. Or they could be exactly connected. One is bubbling up in order to take pressure off of the other. Who knows? We're going to find out, but let's listen in here.
Let me ask you first about Congressman Gaetz's pushback. I know that the story published initially, you and Michael Schmidt published an initial version of the story, and then there was fairly quickly an update to account for Congressman Gaetz really angrily denying all of this and making counter allegations that this is all the product of some sort of improper extortion plot. Can you help us understand what his pushback is here?
Sure. I think that to understand the congressman's statements, the most important thing to do is to look at the timeline in this investigation. What we found is that this investigation began at the end of last summer, and it's been going on for more than 6 months. So this is a serious investigation that was serious enough that even the highest levels of the Justice Department, including the Office of the Attorney General, Bill Barr, said that that it should continue. So that's the context. And this investigation, after going on for several months, what Congressman Gaetz is saying is that somebody then found out about it and used that information to try to get money out of his family. So I'm not saying that the extortion claims that he's making are untrue. I'm just saying that it came on the heels of months and months of an investigation in a part of the country where the offices are very small, and there should be some expectation that information does sometimes leak out of these offices. So the idea that the extortion exists or that it happened, I think that it should be seen in the context of that timeline of an investigation that's serious, brewing for a long time, bubbling out into the local community.
Yeah, so that actually does clarify some stuff for us. So I think that's valuable. So rather than this being totally unrelated, the extortion plot is related to the underlying sexual investigation, but it's not. It's sort of a consequence. It's coming out of the original investigation. So the investigation is taking place. That is all separate. It's its own little silo. They are investigating Matt Gaetz. Somebody, presumably who's a part of that investigation with the Justice Department, as that investigation is going on, we're kind of driving down that road, they take a little piece of that. They say, we know about this. They go over to Matt Gaetz, say, hey, look, we can help you get out of this thing. We are going to try to extort you in order to get that done for the $25 million. So they are working with the FBI to go and investigate that. But that doesn't necessarily negate the underlying investigation, right? It's a crime. It's a bad crime that's on top of the other investigation, but it doesn't sound like, from what this reporter is saying, that it negates the underlying investigation. It's not. The investigation kind of stands on its own. This is something that is a separate loop. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. Let's take some questions over from locals.com/watchingthewatchers or watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Great place to be. Ask some questions. Participate in the show. Don't just sit there. Participate. All right. We've got Sharon Quidney says the presumption of innocence for not only a Republican, but a Trump supporter. Oh, really? Give me a break. Yeah, that's not going to happen. That doesn't typically happen. We got News Now Wyoming says, as much as I love a free press, there needs to be protections out there to stop this kind of crap. Libel is too hard for a public person to get protection from. If there are pics, include them in the effing story. Without the pics, you are lying. Yeah, so pics or there's an internet meme on that, right? Pics or, So yeah, it's a good, right? It's a good comment. There is a lot of this going on. There's a lot, look, this one is hard to judge one way or the other because these are insane claims going both directions, but we live in insane times now. This is Hack Consulting says, we watched this last night on Raquetta's Law live stream from Florida. I mean, I think the biggest issue here is that there was political points trying to be made and not actually get 25 mil or $4.5 million from the Gaetz family. It's so damn crazy. I think he is speaking truthfully. Thankfully, I don't care. I'll let time bring more things out. Hopefully Gaetz has the tapes. I would never release them, but I would rather the feds do it so they can take the blame for the consequences. Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, if everybody's got tapes and the FBI was sort of involved on both ends, presumably they're involved in the underlying investigation, plus this extortion claim. Wild stuff. Jeremy Matrita says he should have also recorded the calls to cover himself in case the FBI doesn't come forward with the recordings. I think it's a very good point, Jeremy. Yeah. And I saw a headline, a very dangerous thing out there that I saw a headline about it, something to the effect that the father, Gaetz's father, was on recordings saying damning things coached by the FBI in order to induce the other party to enter into an illegal transaction, right? So if you're going to go and if you're an undercover person, you got to engage in some sort of criminality, right? To convince the other person to also engage in that criminality with you. But what if the FBI just comes out and says, hey, no, he wasn't working for us. He wasn't undercover. They were actually going to do this illegal thing. Not good. We got Liberty or Death says, Tucker is politicking. He knows where this is going. He has seen what has happened with Me Too and is trying to create distance. I also love how they are trying to create credentials for people. Check out Bill Clinton doing an empowering women event with VP. Kamala. Why not? I mean, he used to be AG, then governor and president. Yeah. Yeah, that's hysterical. We've got Kamala Harris, who says believe all women, but then turned and ran away when those claims were against Joe Biden. Sitting down with Bill Clinton to talk about empowering women. Oh, it's like a bizarro world. We got Norovirus says, anyhow, Robert Gruller, the entire media is attacking Rep. Gaetz. What can he say to defend himself when he is crucified in all the main media channels? Well, look, I don't think Gaetz has any problem with that. I think he's very, very comfortable in this arena. We see he's somebody who just goes right into it, which is a good quality if you're going to be facing these allegations. Now, that being said, legal advice is to not say anything, right? He shouldn't be doing any of those interviews. I don't think he's going to take that advice because he's also a politician. But, you know, you have to think about this from different angles. Okay, if you have a problem and you take that problem to somebody, they're going to identify a solution that is most within their skill set, naturally speaking. Okay, and so the example that I use on this is with doctors. Hey, my back hurts. All right, well, what happens? Well, you go to your doctor. He says, oh, you're too fat, lose some weight. Okay, that's your general doctor. You go to another doctor who's a bone doctor. He says, oh, it's your bones. You know, take some calcium. You go to a chiropractor. Oh, no, you need to be cracked every 2 weeks. All right, go to the chiropractor. You go to the naturopath. They say, oh, take more vitamins. Your magnesium levels are off. All right. So every single person you go to, they're going to identify a problem. The kidney guy is going to say it's your kidneys, they're not working. The brain guy is going to say it's something miswiring in your brain, and the psychologist will say it's all in your head. So they're all going to identify their solution because it sort of is birthed out of their skill set. Here, it's going to be the same answer. From a criminal defense lawyer, anytime somebody's under investigation for a crime, it's obvious. You don't say a thing. You say nothing. That's the solution. Okay, we do the talking for you. You shut your mouth, and that's it. And that's a hard rule. Now, that would be my answer for Mr. Gaetz, but I'm also not a politician. And so he has a political advisor or a public relations advisor or a media person. He knows that he's got multiple things that he needs to weigh. And this happens a lot, right? Somebody will come in and say, hey, my boss is investigating me about, missing money. And so, well, what do you want to do about this? Do you want to talk to the boss and maybe save your job, but potentially incriminate yourself by having a conversation? Or do you want to protect yourself from potential incrimination, but almost virtually guarantee that you lose your job by not having that conversation? So you got to weigh out these priorities. From my perspective as a criminal defense lawyer, very easy. Stop talking. But he's probably not going to do that because he's got other considerations like being a politician, getting reelected, and his whole career kind of hinges on this case. And so it's a different analysis for a politician. They have to be cognizant of those other things that might impact their careers. Next up, we've got Jeremy says, where is the investigation into the congressman on the intelligence committee who the FBI already knew he was sleeping with a Chinese spy? Nothing ever equal. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Swalwell. Eric Swalwell. Whatever happened with that one? Nothing. We have Liberty or Death says, isn't it amazing that right when it was getting heated, the allegation for Gaetz comes out and no one cares about Rep. Eric Sir farts a lot. Swalwell. You got names, Liberty, today. You got some names. You got Swalwell was caught in a honeypot by a Chinese spy. I agree with News Now. Congress should pass a bill or a new case that brought up by SCOTUS to overturn the New York Times versus Sullivan to sort of make some additional penalties on libel or defamation. So yeah, it is interesting. Look, just like everything's going to have a political bend. Everything is political ammunition these days. Everything is weaponized, media, government, even commerce. Can't even go into a grocery store without, you can't go buy a banana without having politics crammed in your face in the form of something. All right, so last question. Chairman of the board says, I'm not taking Gaetz' side on this. He comes off as shady, especially in his Tucker interview, but I don't think having a 17-year-old girlfriend, although creepy AF at his age, is illegal. It probably is, depending on the state. It's probably illegal. Although I don't recommend it. My sister got married at 17. I don't think this is a situation people think of when they say sex trafficking. Gaetz Gate. Hashtag Gaetz Gate. And I saw you on Twitter, Chairman of the board, saying that that you wanted, you like that term. It's a good term. Gaetz Gate. I think it's quite clever. Yeah, Matt Gaetz, look, he's an interesting character for sure. I don't have a lot of love for him in particular. I've had some concerns with some of the things that he did. I've said that on the show, right? And I don't necessarily disagree with him on a personal level, I wouldn't say, but I think that he's somebody who is playing a part and he knows this. So I've listened to him on Clubhouse a few times. And in my opinion, he's sort of like the right's version of AOC, right? She's somebody out there making a lot of noise, talking a lot of things, saying a lot of stuff, but some of it's kind of a little bit more red meat. It's just like, oh, that's juicy. That's stuff that gets me fired up. That's aggressive language. And people like that. They respond to that. But I just don't know how useful it is. You know, are they taken serious as real policy people who are actually going to solve some problems in this country? You know, I don't know. But I think he recognizes that. You know, he knows that this is almost a shtick a little bit. And he said so on Clubhouse, that sometimes he gets provocative in order to rile up attention, to generate attention. And I think one of my original criticisms of him was when he was being a little bit, I would say, overly lacking in concern as it relates to COVID. He was just out there sort of dancing and sort of right in the middle of it. And I thought it was the bad session, the bad message to send during that time. But that doesn't mean that he should be indicted for sex crimes unless there's some pretty serious evidence here. So we'll see where this goes. New York Times is reporting it. She obviously sounds like she's pretty assured of her reporting. So we'll continue to follow this along, see where it goes. So make sure you join us and subscribe for that.